Did it work? All right, so I guess we're live streaming now. Pardon the technical difficulties. Seem to be two links for this meeting, so we just fixed it.
Okay, Domingo, we are live streaming now.
Okay. All right, thank you, Ebenezer. All right, Tanisha, 2025, rotating chairs. I relinquish my chairship. Madame Tanisha Grant, go ahead.
You're amazing, Chair. Thank you. Hey, everyone. My name is Tanisha Grant. I am the Vice Chair of the Youth and Education Committee here at Community Board 12.
Second Vice Chair elect. Don't forget that one too, homie.
Blowing me up, Chair. And I am also the second Vice Chair elect for Community Board 12. And we're excited to be in 2025 and continue the important work that we do here at the Youth and Education Committee. So tonight, our agenda, I'm just going to give you a brief overview of how it will go. First, we will approve the agenda. If we have quorum, do we have quorum? Yes. Okay. So we will approve the agenda. We will invite our elected officials who are here to come and give us reports and updates. And then we will have community connections. Our presentation tonight will be from the Coalition for Education Equity Funding, and it will be on foundation aid formula upgrades, things that they are suggesting that we put in the budget. So we know that it is the start of budget season, the state and city. The state budget will be decided in April, and the city budget is always decided in June. So as a community board, we want to inform ourselves. As a committee, we want to inform the people on what's going on in education in our public schools. So we're excited about that. Then we will have community business, and then we will have old business, new business announcements, and then we will adjourn. Okay. So the first thing that we're going to do is we are going to approve the agenda. So do we have any objections to the agenda? Did y'all get it? I tried to send it to y'all in a couple of different ways.
All right, cool. What we need to do?
So approve the agenda. I
right,
sent it to y'all.
Yeah, we all got it here as well. I motion.
Second.
Hector got it.
Hector seconded.
Second sector, so that it approves. So how many people is that, Chair?
All in favor?
All in favor? Aye.
Yeah. Any abstentions? Any nays? Unanimous.
So the agenda is approved anonymously. Thank you. And now we will go on to elected official updates. If we have any in the audience, do we?
Just raise your hand and we'll be able to bring you up. Going up, going once. Going twice. Let's get into it. Quick question, Tanisha. Do we want to promote everybody in the attendees?
Yeah.
Okay.
Please.
And
Digna, Molly, Randy, and Tiffany. Not too sure who Bell kisses.
okay, we'll promote all of them.
So I'm not an elected official, Chair, but I would like to say that the State of the City took place today by the mayor in Harlem. So, I just want to put it on record that everyone go. And if you haven't seen it, see it. It's important. Okay, so if there's nothing else before we don't have elected officials here, I think that we should turn it over to our guest, which is the Coalition for Education Equity Funding chief, to give us a presentation on foundation funding. And I think that you need to give host privileges to Molly, I believe. Molly? Are we giving host privileges to you?
Molly?
Sorry, I was having trouble unmuting. Yes, give host privileges to me.
Right. And the presentation will be presented by lovely Molly Sinek and I believe Randy Levine. But we also have Digna also is here to support. So turn it over to you, ladies. Give it to us.
Fantastic. So before I start sharing my screen, and we're waiting for one more member of the coalition to join us, and then the presentation is actually going to be given by Digna Kaiser, who will be coming, and Randy will be available to answer questions at the end. But first of all, just a little bit about us. We are the Coalition for Equitable Education Funding. As Tanisha said, we are made up of 120 organizations, who came together to fight for necessary funding for our schools and other educational programming. So while we are officially a New York City coalition, we do look at issues that affect the whole state, and many of our participating orgs also do statewide work. So for instance, I am with the Center for Independence of the Disabled New York. I will turn it over to Digna to introduce herself, and then when Kaiser jumps on, I will get everything. Sure, and I'm seeing a note. Pardon me. So as soon as Digna introduces herself, I can start sharing my screen and I can start the PowerPoint. So Digna, if you want to get started.
Good evening. My name is Digna Lane, and I'm the Community Relations Manager for Good Shepherd Services, in addition to being part of this coalition.
Awesome. All right, so I should have screen sharing capabilities. Give me 1 sec while I make sure I can do that.
Yeah, I made you the co-host, so if you have any issues, let me know.
Perfect. All right, can people see my screen all right?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. All right. So, pardon me 1 second. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm actually going to stop sharing for 1 second. All of that said. Please forgive us. New year, new technical difficulties.
No problem. We have some of our own. Take your time.
Oh, we know, we had 2 links, so we were in another room, yeah, in another room, and we finally figured it out, so.
It's
Take
such
it-
a shame because every time I get back from a vacation, I'm like, finally, now I will be put together now that I am rested. And then I go on vacation and it doesn't happen. And I'm like, I guess this isn't a rest thing. It's just a me thing. That's
No, I think
disappointing.
Part of being rested is the flexibility of being able to troubleshoot.
I like that. Okay, so now I am going to start sharing. We're going to get into this presentation. So the idea behind this presentation, by the way, is that afterwards, we are going to send you these resources so that you will be able to take them back and present to your communities and to really get engaged. So that said, we are going to have plenty of opportunities for questions at the end, and we absolutely 100% encourage you to ask as many as you see fit. Either type them in the chat and or ask them afterwards. But we will make sure to address everything. And I
If a
believe that,
resolution is needed,
Domingo,
and if
or
a resolution,
Molly,
Molly,
promote Kaiser.
yeah,
I got you right now.
are we able to promote Kaiser?
Yes, I just did.
Oh, fantastic. That was beyond me.
So Molly, also something to think about, if any resolution is needed for any item that is being advocated for, feel free to let us know as well.
Oh, don't you worry, we will. All right, so perfect. And I see Kaiser is here. We were just giving a brief introduction. So if you are ready to get started, we are good to go.
Perfect. Hi, everyone. It's good to be here. My name is Kaiser, she, her. I'm with the Alliance for Quality Education and also with CEEF. Molly, you already did the background? Great. Perfect. Thank you so much for that. So jumping right in, just some background about CEEF, the Coalition for Equitable Education Funding. Many of you and many people played a role in our budget advocacy last year. Because of your advocacy, the city continued funding for many key education programs that were at risk of ending due to expiring funds. Some programs were continued using one-year city funding, meaning the funding will expire in June of 2025 unless extended. So that is a fight we are engaging in right now. And other programs were continued long-term using state foundation aid funding. So we are going to talk all about the foundation aid formula. And some of these programs that you're going to see on the next slides are programs that are funded by that money. Programs continued through one-year city dollars. So these are the ones that are potentially on the chopping block that we will be fighting for again. 3K, preschool special education classes, summer rising, arts programming, community schools, learning to work, restorative justice, teacher recruitment, mental health continuum, immigrant family communications and outreach, tutoring, and student success centers. And then programs continued through long-term state foundation aid dollars include preschool special education, 500 school social workers and psychologists, more than 100 community schools, 100 shelter-based coordinators, literacy and dyslexia programming, bilingual programming, translation and interpretation services, career pathways programs, and public schools athletic league. So foundation aid funding is one of the more flexible sources of funding for education. And so as we talk more about the formula, just know that New York City spends that money in various ways, including all of those programs that we just mentioned. So what is the foundation aid formula? I'm going to pass it over to Digna to tell you all about it.
Once again, good evening. And as Kaiser said, what is foundation aid? Is the largest source of funding from the state of New York's to city of New York, to New York City, excuse me, public school and other districts, distributed to New York City and other school districts through funding formula that provides funding to each student. Currently being re-examined for the first time since 2007. Let that sink in. How much funding does this provide? $24.6 billion to districts across the states, $9.9 billion to the New York City Public School, 25% of NYCPS budget. How is it used? The NYCPS uses the fund in many different ways, including school budgets, educational programs. How does it work? The formula sets the base amount per student. The base funding amount is then adjusted to account for inflation, regional costs and differences, and students' need with added weight for student living poverty, student with disability, English language learners. New York State determines what district minimum local contribution is and how much is subtracted. So I'm gonna go with the Molly on this one, right? So this looks really confusing, right? And this looks like a lot of information, and you don't have to be an expert to look at this. Take your time, go through it. I'm gonna use Molly's analogy, which basically say you may not know how to build a house, but you have the tools here to see how the house was built and what is included in the house.
So how did we get here? The Campaign for Fiscal Equity versus State of New York, 2003, was a lawsuit. AQE, Senator Robert Jackson, and others sued, alleging that New York State was violating students' rights under the state constitution, and won. After that, as a result, the state worked to establish a needs-based per student funding formula called Foundation Aid. So the formula was created as the solution to this problem, and it was supposed to force the state to pay what was needed for students to get the education that they need and that they are guaranteed based on the Constitution. Oh, sorry. Yeah, thank you. So the Foundation Aid formula was adopted as a result in 2007. Full funding was to be phased in over 4 years. After the 2008 recession, New York State froze further increases and then made significant cuts. So for 16 years, school districts went without the funding they were due from the state. And AQE and many others were advocating that whole time, fighting to get the Foundation Aid formula fully funded. And finally, in 2023, so last school year, Governor Hochul and the New York State Legislature finally fully funded Foundation Aid. At this point, the formula is outdated. Most parts haven't changed since it began in 2007. So the first fight was to get it fully funded. We did that. Now we need it to be updated. Sorry. State funding for public education has not kept up with rising costs and changing student needs. We'll talk more about how much has changed since 2007. In 2002, New York City and New York State contributed around the same amount, 50-50-ish, to New York City's education budget. Now the city contributes 57%, while the state contributes only 37%. And that's not to illustrate that the city is paying too much. It's to illustrate that the state has been slacking, and because of that, the city has had to make up for the lack due to lack of state funding because of rising education costs. So the city should continue to contribute what it is. The state needs to contribute more as well to make the burden on the city less extreme.
So we think it's time for change, right? Why? Well, let's just give you a little refresher. What was it like in 2007? In 2007, President Barack Obama launched his first campaign for the first presidential campaign. The first iPhone was released. Also, Twitter was only 1 year old, and it was called Twitter, not the new X or whatever it is, right? So those are some of the things that happened in 2007. What changed in New York City schools since 2007? Since you asked, COVID-19, youth mental health crisis, rise in students' homelessness, increase in community school, changes to standardized tests, technology. New learning standards. Added 3K and pre-K. More children were diagnosed with autism. The state exam formula for the first time in 5 years. Why now? Excuse me. The state examining formula for the first time in 5 years. New York State budget funded Rockefeller Institute to study the formula and recommend changes. Changes could have a major impact on how much school education funding in New York City and other school districts get from New York State. Why now? Even with the changes to the formulas that seem small can make a huge difference. Last year, Governor Hochul and New York State's legislators agreed to change the inflation measure. The result? School districts across New York State receive less dollars, and and NYCPS receive 126 million less than it should have.
Okay, so we're going
Recommendations?
to, sorry. Yeah, we're going to go over 8 recommendations that were put forth by the Coalition for Equitable Education Funding. We believe that there needs to be a weight for students in temporary housing and students in the foster care system. More than 146,000 students are homeless in New York City. Around 7,000 students are in foster care in New York City. And you may be aware that the Fair Student Funding formula does include an added weight for students in temporary housing. So that's an inequity. That's something that we in the city are paying that the state is not factoring into their formula. And we know, I'm a former teacher, we know that these populations, homeless students, students in foster care, they need more support in order to access the curriculum. And that support costs money. It comes with costs. That's just the reality. And so the state formula needs to reflect that. It said that my internet is unstable. Can everyone still hear me? Yes.
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Good. Just checking. Re-examine the current poverty weight. So currently the formula uses the free and reduced price lunch data and also census data from 2000. As for free and reduced price lunch data, that data is not as useful anymore because now every student has access to free and reduced price lunch, which is a good thing, but that means that the forms don't reflect the reality the same way they used to. And census data from 2000 is obviously outdated. Measures are outdated. Simply update the census data. You need a more nuanced picture to get an accurate sense of poverty. And then increase weights for students with disabilities and English language learners. New York State has never met the needs of students with disabilities or English language learners. Both populations have a range of needs, but there's only one weight for students with disabilities and one weight for English language learners, meaning that regardless of the level of need of a student, they are just classified as having a disability or classified as English language learner. And it's a flat adjustment to the per student allocation that they get. Increased funding is needed to provide specialized instruction and services.
Update the regional cost index. Account for difference in salaries and costs in different regions. Value has not been updated since 2006. Include funding for 3K and pre-K. Currently, the formula only covers K through 12. While New York City provides separate funding for pre-K, it does not guarantee need-based funding for each student. New York City is paying for 3K almost entirely. Include funding for students with disability through the year they turn 22 years old. The district now serves students with disabilities through the school year in which they turn 22 and they haven't graduated. FA formula, Foundation A formula only includes funding for students through the age of 21. Include replace successful school district models. New York State used successful school district models to determine the Foundation A base rate for each student. This model identifies schools, districts in New York that successfully based on their students' performance and standardized tests and that spend less than other districts. New York State then uses the spending of these districts to determine the base amount for each student for the foundation aid. Still me?
I can
Okay.
take it.
Okay,
Thanks.
thank you.
Yeah. So in terms of replacing the successful school districts model, the state has not updated the list of so-called successful school districts since 2017. And basing funding on school districts where students do well on tests does not capture the needs of large urban school districts or small rural ones. The model does not reflect the true cost of educating students in New York City or in many other parts of the state. And it's just a model that education funding experts have acknowledged is not reflective of reality. Include funding for class size. This is big for New York City. The new state law requires New York City to lower class size. That comes with a lot of added costs. The state has not provided additional funding.
Rockefeller Institute study. The Rockefeller Institute study released on December 2nd is over 300 pages. Presents a menu of recommendations.
Sorry about that. I believe my internet may have just cut out.
Okay.
Here, let me see if I can. Oh, there we go. Wait. I'm gonna get it back. No one panic.
Take your time.
Trying to take us back now. There we go.
The governor can decide which, if any, recommendation to be included in the proposed budget. I apologize, guys. I'm getting over the flu. Study does not include a way for students in temporary housing or students in foster care. Funding for 3K, pre-K, students and over the age of 21. The funding for New York City class size requirements by state law.
I'm sorry you're still sick, Digna. You've been sick for a long time. But no apology needed. So the study did come out, and these are some of the recommendations: updating and changing the regional cost index, updating and changing poverty weight measures, multiple weights for English language learners based on level of English proficiency, sorry. We can go to the next slide. I think there's another page of these, right? Perfect. moving students with disabilities weight to a separate funding stream with different funding amounts based on intensity of instruction services needed, and tweaks to the successful school district model, but continued focus on districts that do well on state tests. So these are recommendations. Again, the governor is not obligated to make these changes. She can pick and choose. She can have her own ideas and do something totally different. She might also do, part of one idea or use an idea from the study, but do it slightly differently. And that's important because the formula, as you saw, is very complicated. The different pieces kind of thank you. The specific proposals are what matter. The different pieces interact. Have reasons to the poverty weight could result in less money for New York City public schools, depending on exactly how they decide to start calculating poverty in the future. That doesn't mean they shouldn't change the way they measure it now. We already discussed how the
I think Kaiser's internet may have just cut out.
Okay.
So
Next, I can take the next.
cool.
I'm so sorry. I am back. Yes, my internet cut out. I think I'm okay now. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
It's the wind, honestly, I think is what it is.
Oh, is that what it is? I was like,
Probably.
clearly something's going on because we're all having
I'm
trouble.
guessing, but I think
We'll
it's the
blame
wind.
That sounds
Yeah.
good to me. Sorry about that. 30. Oh. Is this where
So
Go ahead, Digna. Sorry.
timeline of how this works. So the Rockefeller studies, the Rockefeller study was doing December 1st. The study was released. Then now you have on next week, in January, after the state of the state, the governor will release her budget. And then the next one is by, April 1st is the deadline for the budget to be released. Does that happen on that time all the time? Probably not. However, it is our hope that by then we will have some information on that. And after January 14th, next week, we'll have some ideas of what are some of the other things that was included. So here are some action steps that we would like for you to take and also to pass on to people in your community so they can look at that. Email Governor Hochul and the key New York State legislators by scanning the QR code in the yellow, or sign up for updates with us and get involved to find out what else is happening and so we can keep you abreast of some of the changes or step by step what's going on. And that's on the blue. So you can scan the blue QR code on the blue for the QR code to get more involved and to get updates from us. And you can scan the one on the yellow. And we encourage you to scan both of them, but also the one on the yellow is so that you can email the Governor Hochul and other key legislators. And now I think I turn it over to Randy, right? Now it's Randy. If you have any questions, and Randy can actually answer some of those questions for you, or any of us can jump in at some other point.
Thank you so much, Digna. Randy, can you introduce yourself real quick?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Randy Levine. I use the pronoun she, her, and I work at Advocates for Children of New York. And so happy to be here with Digna, Kaiser, Molly, and Tanisha representing the Coalition for Equitable Education Funding.
Thank you so much, Randy. So, Chair, committee, do we have any questions? I know we got some questions.
My question is more around as we work with you have community members, then you have community boards. It's have y'all developed template resolutions addressing the key 8 points so that other community boards, and we send it to our elected officials, we send it to the governor, because at the end of the day, we speak through resolutions. So for instance, when we send the SLA resolutions on whether this business should get a liquor license, that's usually the language we speak with. So any recommendations on that, not necessarily like we could share this with the listserv and everybody, but as far as a board, we can also write resolutions and send it directly to the elected officials.
Absolutely. We would love your support with a resolution. What we're suggesting today, just because today is January 9th and the governor is going to release her budget in the next 2 weeks, is we want to make sure that the resolution is directly speaking to the proposals that she makes at this, since we're so close to her budget being released. So we will get that to you as soon as we know what she's proposing so that we can be as impactful as possible.
Right, I completely agree with that. Very strategic. Questions?
Yeah.
Noemi has a question. She's gonna ask it short.
Would it be possible to flip over to slide 19? I think I had a question on that slide and then it disappeared and I moved on to the next. But if you can do that, that would be great. And then I had a follow-up question that was pertaining to slide 23. And it was more about the funding. So just some clarifying questions, just so I could understand a bit better. Okay, yes, here. So it was based on the decrease of funding that's actually, so this is something that is actually happening right now, how we're receiving funds versus what it should be?
Yeah, that's a great question. So this year we are expecting the possibility of major changes to the formula that will impact how much New York City Public Schools get next year and beyond. In this slide, we just wanted to give one example of why it matters so much. The formula really hasn't had any major changes since it was first developed in 2007. But last year, the governor and the New York State Legislature made one minor change, which is there's always a growth factor there that's supposed to reflect inflation. And they decreased it a little bit from what it was supposed to be in the formula. And as a result, currently this year, New York City Public Schools is getting around $120 million less from the state than it would have if we had just kept the formula the way it was originally. So this has already happened, and we're highlighting it because we as advocates need to make sure that, and community members need to make sure that we're all stepping up and making sure that our state legislators are fighting for the resources that our schools need, especially in a year when we could see bigger changes to the formula.
Thank you for that. Welcome. And then slide 23. My question was regarding the L's in the formula in comparison to students with disabilities. Is it either or could it also be both when making those calculations?
That's a great question. So if a student is an English language learner and a student with disability, then they would get both of those extra weights or both of those extra counts. So that's something that we definitely want to keep because we know that there are many students with disabilities who are also English language learners. And when we look at shortages of services, the shortages are even greater for students who have both of those identities than for one or the other. And I'll just note here too that we had recommended increasing the weight for English language learners. And we said, maybe you should also look at exploring some different weights depending on the specific needs of English language learners. This is why we have to be careful because the Rockefeller Institute study did say, okay, we're going to do a few different weights for English language learners. But their specific proposal, the way that they change the weights for English language learners would actually result in decreased funding for New York City for English language learners. And that should be a non-starter at this moment in time and always.
Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Yes, I have a couple. Get my glasses. Sorry.
Says a few questions.
Yeah, just a few questions. How is this new formula affecting schools that are going to design a Title II school? Is there any correlation between what is happening now and the possibility of funding decrease to those schools? And if so, what are the changes? How will that affect those schools?
So the state funding formula determines how much funding each school district in the state gets. And for New York City, we're considered one school district. And so this is really about how much funding New York City public schools gets from the state, as far as the largest source of education funding from the state. Then New York City public schools determines how to distribute that funding to schools. And so we have a separate funding formula, Kaiser referenced it earlier, called Fair Student Funding, that determines how funding is distributed to schools in New York City. And then we have a number of other education programs that are outside that formula as well. And so our coalition this year is really focused on two things at the same time. Number one, fighting for the resources we need from Albany for New York City public schools. And then also fighting on the city level to make sure that our schools get what they need to serve all students, especially students who have the greatest needs.
Thank you. Now, in terms of the fighting, and had the coalition made specific recommendations regarding the formula? If so, what is the formula that the city or the state should be using to fund city schools?
Yeah, because the debate happening right now is really about the state funding formula. We're really focused right now as far as the formula on the state foundation aid formula. And so those are the recommendations that Kaiser and Digna reviewed quickly. And, just to name a few of them, a wait for students in temporary housing and students in the foster system, which does not exist at all right now for the per pupil foundation aid funding formula that determines how much funding New York City public schools gets from Albany. Increasing the weights for English language learners and students with disabilities, increasing the regional cost index because our wages need to be higher in order to recruit and retain teachers than in certain other parts of the state. And so on the state level, those are some of the recommendations that we are making. And on the city level, the main thing that our coalition is focused on right now is that there are a number of programs that are funded on the city level that only have 1 year city funding. Things like, not all of them, but a good number of 3K programs, preschool special education classes, arts programming, summer programming, mental health services, learning to work programs that give internships to students who are overage and undercredited, immigrant family outreach, and the list goes on. There's a whole list of programs that the funding will expire in June unless the city continues funding for them. And so we're also working at this point to ask the mayor to extend funding and to provide long-term funding for those programs so that we don't have to fight for them every year.
I mean, I understand that the fight is, at the state level to really provide the funding that we need downstate. But since the current level of funding is 126 million less than in 2007, my question about the recommendation is the coalition not just suggesting an increase here and, include this, but specific number of that increase? This must be increased at, 20% from the current level of funding. Are there numbers that that the coalition is providing to the state? Because we know that the state can be very, mercurial about things sometimes. And since they already have a report from a very recognized institute, so how is the coalition arresting those recommendations that we are already underfunded, and the recommendation, we are under the risk of those funding go below since we are not waiving things appropriately? So is there a number? Are you using numbers to say to the governor, these are the percentages that we need? And if so, what are those?
Thanks so much for these really thoughtful and great questions. So while the coalition is doing this work, there's also an effort underway by the Center for Educational Equity and the American Institute Research, who are doing a more in-depth study of the formula. And they're looking at all of the data, and they're looking at best practices. And I think, and their goal is eventually to have a brand new formula that truly meets the needs of students and reflects the costs of educating students in our schools today. And so that work is ongoing. I think they agree with us that in the meantime, that shouldn't stop us from advocating for a wait for students in temporary housing right now. And they have put out a suggestion for this year for that wait as one example. I think what we're going to do in terms of numbers, I very much agree with you, is at this moment, we want to see the package that the governor is proposing and analyze it and come back with our response as far as what we think is needed and what would need to change in the formula to get where we want to be for this coming year.
And can I
Thank you
jump in
so
on that
much.
as well?
Absolutely. Yes, please do.
So again, the purpose, and we've made this point, but to kind of put a finer point on it, the purpose of the formula, it was created in response to a lawsuit. It was supposed to accurately calculate the cost of educating students from year to year. And therefore enable the state to, each district in the state to provide the constitutionally mandated sound basic education to each student. It changes every year. That's why it's a formula, because there's all these different, calculations that are made. And so while we could say, for instance, you need to restore the 126 million that was lost with the inflation adjustment, that would only be for this year. And actually 126 million was for last year. And so it might be a different number for next year. And so that's why our recommendations are a little bit more broad as well, because they need to adjust the formula so that the goal that we have is really the same as the goal of the formula in the first place. We need the adjustments to accurately capture what is being spent on education. We're not saying just give us more money. I think there's a perception sometimes that there's just like a never-ending need for money in education, which I get.
It's
but
true.
Also, yeah, it is. We can always use more. But at the same time, what we're saying right now is not like we can use more and more and more. What we're saying is this is how much we're spending right now. And the formula is calculating this, right? Randy mentioned the salaries that teachers, we need to pay teachers a higher salary in order to retain talented teachers in New York City. That's not just theoretical. We do pay teachers a higher salary. We already do. It's already negotiated in the contract. So if that money isn't being accurately calculated in the formula, then where's it coming from, right? We have to scrape together, fight to find that added money, and it's a strain on the city. And we know that there are other, very important needs that the city has. And so it's really about advocating for the formula to just accurately reflect what the needs already are. I don't know if that answers your question, but, and so if we said, we need 100,000 more for this year, then it wouldn't change the broader situation, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I also just wanted, oh, sorry, I cut someone off.
She just said thank you so much.
Oh, great. Sorry. I just wanted to add on to that and say that a lot of these, because I agree with you that obviously like people care about numbers, they care about numbers a lot. And so the numbers that we are coming in with are more about the demographics. So for instance, like AFC and Randy just like published a report about how many students in temporary housing there are. And so we can now go to legislators and be like, hey, this formula that does not acknowledge this one population, that population is now made up of 146,000 students. And like Randy and other members of our coalition, we're going into meetings saying, and these are the percentages of your district that are made up of these students who are not being sufficiently represented in a formula that is supposed to be aiming to achieve equity. So we are going into these meetings with numbers, even if they're not the actual like mathematical numbers of what the equation will be. And as was said earlier, like there are other organizations, other groups who are working on those numbers, like the math of the formula specifically, while we are coming at it from the other end, being like, here's the math on what this formula does not represent.
But it's also completely unacceptable where the New York Times does a study that 1 in 8 students are homeless, yet you don't weigh that. You know, that just shows not only the disconnect in reality that certain people have, but also if the Rockefeller Institute is doing this, right, it also shows the disconnect there as well. Because if you have a newspaper reporting on this, it's like, and yet you're creating some sort of equitable solution to this formula, right? It's like 1 in 8 students are homeless, and you're telling me that doesn't merit weight. I think that's completely unacceptable. You know, and it goes
and
to
unequitable.
yes, and it goes to show, like, again, where we are as a city and as a state, you know, and all the dangers and everything, because everything intersects. You know, so.
Question?
Yes, Chair. I think
We have a
also,
question by somebody from the audience.
Yeah, my name is Al Curland. I'm a member of the public here in Washington Heights. And I've been part of the education and community for a few decades. My question is that the new national administration is advocating for the elimination of the Department of Education.
Right.
So my question is, how many dollars would that take away from the Board of Education? And is that being figured into the ask for increased funding?
Great.
I think they deal more like Title I, right? Like federal dollars going into the schools.
Right, but if the schools lose that money,
Yeah, Title I funds. So like a lot of the poor school, well, a lot of schools that have a amount of students classified as in poverty are gonna lose those funds. Right?
52% of schools across our nation are considered Title I schools.
Yeah.
When we're talking about federal dollars, we're talking about things like school food. Federal dollars pay for school food. Federal dollars pay for SNAP programs, which, you know, intersectionally affects, you know, children going to school, right? Things of that nature. But that's a great question, because my question was, how important is it to get this funding with this oncoming administration in our federal government level, Randy?
Yeah, again, thank you for the great questions. And just to respond really quickly on students in temporary housing, I think we couldn't agree more with you. And, you know, certainly expect that to be part of the resolution that we come back to you with. But I'd say even before that, please feel free to let your state legislators know that is your position on the issue, because we do think that one is gaining some traction.
What is it, Tanisha? $1.7 million to do this study, and yet you couldn't even incorporate
$2 million. You know, they got $2 million. I want y'all to understand. We advocated last year for the study to be done, but we advocated for New York State Chancellor Betty Rosa to do it, and we was only asking for $1 million. Governor Kathy Hochul decided to give $2 million to Rockefeller Institute to do the study, which I think is inequitable. I was one of the first people to testify at their public hearings, and none of them reflected our communities. None of them will ever have children that go to our public schools. So it was a very bad decision. I want to say, Tanisha Grant, am saying that it was a very bad decision on the state side to even allow this to happen. I have been in many, many, many public hearings, and this was the only panel I had ever seen that did not have any questions, not for the people that they asked to testify or from the people from the community, like a lot of people on this call right now who came out and spent their time to testify and speak for our public schools. It was very weird, Chair, and I don't think that they did their job. And I also want to say to not have a wait for foster children, since I was a foster child, equitable means that everyone gets the money that they need. That means that some children might need more than others. It's equitable when every child is getting what they need. So, yeah, I'll leave it there. Randy?
So as
How
far as
important is
federal, yes, as far as federal funding, New York City Public Schools gets around $2 billion currently from the federal government. That's around 5% of the New York City Public Schools budget. And I think I'm going to say two things that I think are both true at the same time. The first is that the threats posed by the Trump administration, I certainly hope that our city and state will respond by doubling down and showing their commitment to all of New York students, especially those who need the most support. The federal government, the role that the federal government has traditionally played is one of protecting the rights of students who were shut out of public schools, who were not given what they needed in public schools, and of providing funding for those students, for low-income students, for students with disabilities, for students who are homeless. And so we really need the city and the state to double down and show their commitment. And that's why it's particularly important for them to make these changes to the formula at this moment. And then I also just want to say that, you know, the policies that the Trump administration has put forth during the campaign would be devastating for students. I think at this moment, we can't assume that they are foregone conclusions. Many Republican presidents have talked in the past about their desire to eliminate the federal Department of Education, and they have not been able to do it. That does take congressional approval. Reducing funding would also take congressional approval. And so, you know, these are threats, and we need our city and state to do all they can to protect students and to give our students the funding they need. And, you know, I don't want parents to think that special education services are going away tomorrow or anything like that, because I don't think that they are. That would take a lot of big action in Washington.
Yeah.
Thank you, Randy.
But I also feel like fear mongering is one of the most used tactics on our community as well. I think it's a matter of like, this is what we need, and let's stop asking. You know what I'm trying to say, and letting our communities know that we have the power to, and we've done it in the past. He was president for 4 years. That checklist didn't check much off. You know what I'm trying to say? So I feel like fear mongering our communities into that is not necessarily the strategy. I think we survived 4 years. I think we could thrive in these 4 years by having our communities advocate. What he did was not check a lot of things off, but I think he brought our communities together more effectively just by the stupidity coming out of Washington, you know, and pardon the French. So again, like, I feel like our communities are resilient, and you could put whoever you want. They can have orange hair, purple hair, whatever they want. We survived this long, we'll survive longer, you know? So I think what we have in hand is a good fight on foundation aid. When I pay taxes, all I see is my money being taken away. They don't ask me where it's going. I think this is where it should go. You know what I'm saying? And I think we got to make it real clear. And I think this is something, Tanisha, that like we could like really take on this fight this year. And I don't believe in multiple like fighting in multiple fronts, you know, but I really think like as a community board, we could, you know, show me where the money is, and that's what our kids need, you know. So I think that's something that we should really prioritize as a committee, and get our elected officials to see where they stand with that as well, you know, because a lot of rhetoric. You might have been a champion of education in the past. We need you to be a champion right now, though. You know what I'm saying? It was great what happened in 2003, the lawsuit. We need another lawsuit in 2025, you know, so we need to really like hold our elected officials at a like, hey, look, this is what it is, and this is what we need, and let's keep it pushing, you know. And trust me, last thing you want is Tanisha going into your office and like, yo, what we doing?
Yeah, speaking of the offices, I think it's that we need to get in touch with our elected officials and tell them how important it is to show up to our meetings and give us an update about what their priorities are in this year's budget and make it clear to them that education is very important to us. The Foundation A formula is very important to us, and we need to be on the same page. And I feel like it's a little disrespectful at this point. So I definitely will be also hitting them up. I think we should hit them up as a community board, and I will be hitting them up on personally because I haven't seen our people here in a minute. And you know, Robert Jackson is like the father of this fight. So we really need to hear and strategize with them. I also think that maybe we could organize a town hall, like in partnership with CEC6. I know that Chief will be presenting to them as well, because like you said, with the fear mongering, how we combat that is education. And, you know, we need to bring this education to our parents because this affects every child in our public schools in our community. So we thank y'all so much.
Yes.
Please keep us updated. We sure after the state of the state, we'll come back to the table and figure out a resolution that we can present in February.
Right.
Do y'all want to talk real quick about teaming up to do a panel at the caucus? I think that's worth mentioning.
Yeah, whatever you need from us, you can count on us. CB12 is open for business. You know, and we're not just talking about like the rhetorical, but we really want to see change in our community, and that starts with doing more and less talking.
Right, and we will be certain to also share the code so that our parents can also email our elected officials up here and our state officials.
Yeah, whatever they need. Like I'm assuming. You know, our assembly person and our senator are pretty good, but I think they need to just be a little bit more or a lot more vocal, because Foundation Aid, I heard it through Tanisha. I never heard like anybody else talking about it up here, to tell you the truth.
And it's a big thing, especially in our community, especially if you're talking about Harlem, Washington Heights. It's a big thing because we know that our public schools have always been severely underfunded, and the fight started with a parent in Washington Heights. But Randy, do you want to talk a little bit about the panel that we're trying to put together for caucus to bring awareness there and tell people to come if they're going to be at the caucus?
Yeah, we have a number of upcoming events, and so that's why Kaiser put in again to sign up for our list so that we can let you know about all of them. From what we've submitted for a caucus panel weekend, we have an Albany Advocacy Day in partnership with AQE, and we'll be doing a new action alert, another parent teach-in. And so lots of ways to get involved. And I just want to thank everyone so much for their time tonight and also for the engagement. It's been so great to hear all of your ideas and to, you've had some really amazing questions. So thank you for that. Really appreciate it.
We appreciate you. We really thank you for this amazing presentation. And we thank you for all of your work, like every year for our children. And, you know, I'm a big fan of the coalition. I think it makes us stronger. And I really, really, really like the work that's being done and can't wait to support the continuing of the money, of the work and the getting of the money so we can move on to another issue, because funding is just one issue that we have to tackle. We haven't even talked about universal child care. So we're sure that we'll have a presentation on that, because that is another thing that is essential to our school community and to our parents. So thank you so much. I know, Molly, you said you wanted to share the screen for something.
So we can't ask questions in the chat, so I'll repeat the question. Is there a calendar of upcoming events we can take a screenshot of? And then the other question was, give me a second. I gotta just, because this is a public meetings and the public can't see.
Is there other ways to get involved?
Oh, and is there other ways to get involved? Those were the questions asked by Tiffany Khan.
So I am sharing these QR codes again. We don't currently have a list of upcoming events, but we are very diligent about sending out emails with updates. So please, 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 if you want to get involved, sign up for those updates and you will be alerted to every single event that we have coming up. And then right now, if you're interested in immediate action, again, we always say, please like email the governor, email your legislators. We have another action alert that may have been placed in the chat, and if not, we'll put it in for city action alerts. And also like some immediate action is to just take the information that we've given you tonight, and we will be sending out a follow-up email with these resources and share with your community and make them sign up for our updates and alerts and make them email and call their legislators.
Also, I'll share another action that can be really powerful. AQE, the Alliance for Quality Education, has an advocacy day on February 4th. CEEF will be joining that advocacy day. So we will all be getting on buses and going up to Albany. This is really, I mean, in terms of the timing, in terms of the audience, right? Like this is the way to push the needle on the decision makers. And so if that's something you are able to join for, you can email me. I'm putting my email in the chat, but I will also say it out loud because I know we have people listening. It is Kaiser, KAISER @aqeny.org. And that is open to everyone. So please just reach out and you can join us. And additionally, like about the advocacy day and also the presentation, which we'll send to you, think about the community spaces that you can share these with. It's important to keep doing outreach and reaching more and more communities and people. So that's another thing that you can put on your list, your to-do list.
Nisha, you're muted.
Thank you so much, y'all. We really appreciate it. So we'll follow up with y'all after the State of the State and after the coalition, you know, does what it does, so that we can make sure that we have a resolution ready for our general meeting in February. How does that sound? Thank y'all.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for having us.
No
Thank you.
problem. Thank you for the
Thank
wonderful
you.
information.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
All right. Happy New Year.
Happy
Alright,
New
Chico.
Year.
What's next, Chief?
Community business. Do we have any community business?
As far as committee business, what we got? We changed the time. What we would need to do is a vote to rectify the 6:30 meeting as opposed to 7. That because due to staffing on Thursdays, we would have to start at 6:30, not 7. So that's why the timing changed. I believe Tanisha and myself were emailed around like just issues with the time because we're the only meeting on Thursday. So they leave at this time. So they were just like, hey, by 6:30, we would have to do the meeting. So we would need a motion to have our second Thursday meetings at 6:30.
Second.
All right. All right, T. That's so you. I'm not cheering. I'm just supporting.
I'm saying, yeah.
There's a motion. So
There's
if
a
I could
motion.
say,
Is this second? What we do after that? I'm still learning.
so usually when you do that, now what basically happens is, you ask. Usually I do the opposite. So I ask if there's any abstentions or any oppositions, because you automatically assume that everybody's for it if nobody votes. So abstentions is a no. So people say abstentions is like, oh, I'm not sure. That's like a soft no. A hard no is no, a nay. And then yes, right? So usually, like for me, when I abstain to something is because I don't have enough information, or I'm not just convinced, but I'm also not against it. So I don't vote no for it. So however you want to do it, T, you could just start off by,
Okay, anybody abstain? Any no's?
unanimous.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeses?
usually say. No. Usually when you say that is the only thing left is yes, so it's like unanimous at that point.
Okay, so yes is
Unanimous.
unanimous?
Unanimous. So you
Yes.
got your agenda approved
Motion
unanimously.
Yes.
Yeah, you got your agenda approved unanimously and our 6:30 approved unanimously. So any other committee business that folks want to talk about? Anything?
I want to talk about some old business. Like, I just want to go over like what we said last month, that we're trying to do in 2025.
Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, so being that there's no more committee business, did you want to say something?
There's a couple of brief announcements.
Okay, so when we get to announcements, I got you.
Yeah.
All right, Tanisha, so you're moving to old business next?
Yes. So last month we decided a whole thing of what we want to do. So January was the focus on the foundation aid.
Correct.
So and solutions, not suspensions. Do we have anybody that we're thinking of that we might want to come present on that? Should we be looking around for people?
Who took that on? You did, T?
Did I?
What's the minutes from last?
I know I took on the foundation aid.
No, Hector took on, I see Hector's in communication now with the city comptroller, and he also reached out to the state comptroller. I see Hector's preparing for his stuff is around, Hector, he's still here?
No.
No, he stepped out already. So Hector was leading, which one was Hector doing? Hold up, we're just looking at the breakdown.
Minutes.
And then we had a motion to table assignment too until January.
Yeah,
Mhm.
correct. Broken down in the minutes, which I think. I got it at home. I just gotta look at like,
Office and federal state funding for comptroller, learning about policies, federal and state funding.
so that's Hector.
So that is Hector.
So Hector, so next month we got scheduled, Tanisha, state and federal funding. And that's why I think he was reaching out to the comptroller.
Yes, we want to have the comptroller on next month,
Yeah,
right?
correct, yeah. So
And I
that's,
see also partner with small class size advocates. Did we have a presentation on smaller class sizes already?
yes, in November.
All right, I think we're supposed to, because everything is going to probably have to be revisited because it's budget season, right? And
Yeah.
smaller class sizes, even though that passed, so far New York City public schools don't seem to have a plan to actually implement that. That's going to take building more schools and more teachers. It was supposed to be implemented like on over 4 years, and I think like we're on our third.
Yeah, it's 5 years and we are in
5
year
years,
4.
yeah. And it's
year
class
3.
sizes have
Yeah.
actually in the last year got a little bigger.
Yeah.
So I think that's something that we want to watch out for.
Okay.
So I just want to remind everybody to remember to really review the notes and remember what your assignments are and what everyone said that they would be able to coordinate with different agencies to have presentations so we can make the information available for our community.
Mhm.
I also want to say I want us to brainstorm on how we can because we go to a lot of things in our community. I want to say all of us. And I hear parents, their parents have a lot of issues, and they're valid. But I would love to see more parents come, more community members come to our meetings virtually. It's even easier now, right? So if we could brainstorm on how to, draw more parents in to get the information and help us advocate for our community, that would be great. What y'all think?
I think, in the past, working with trying to provide English classes to parents whose kids are in public school, we work very closely with the parents coordinator. What that allowed was that we really have good access to parents. So maybe part of how we want to distribute our information is to start on the ground, which is, if we had the email of the parent coordinator of school, that would be perfect to just announce this is what we are doing this week or next month. A flyer attached to that they can distribute and post on whatever community board at the school there is, so the parents have a sense to what is happening and whether they want to come or not. And QR code for them to join via Zoom, so it's easier rather than having to type the entire thing. Ways to make it easier, I think.
I think that's an amazing idea. I think that we should have flyers and that we should, build relationships with our parent coordinators. We should make sure that we're sending everything to them. And really, I wouldn't be opposed to, even visiting schools like, hey, we want more parent engagement. We want the parents to get this information. We want the parents to participate. That's an amazing idea. I'm for that because I think it's very important.
I think that you mentioned meet them. One way probably for us to start is also figure out when they have the parent teacher. In my school, it's parent teacher. What is that? The PTA meeting in our school, the teachers don't participate. It's the parent, the parent association, parent teacher. I forgot what it's called, but when parents go, the parent association.
No, PTA is
it's just like that. Okay, so maybe we find out when they're having those meetings. I actually will volunteer to attend and talk to them about what we do here. Probably not to all of them, but definitely to the ones that are kind of close to my address. Because also that's the way it's not only telling them come to us, but it's also us going there, seeing what they are doing, see if there is anything that we can bring back here, and just try to get some kind of engagement and get to know each other.
Yeah, but I also think we should leverage our relationship with the superintendent, being that he's so open. And it's whenever he has all his parent coordinators together, have us present them.
Yes.
Because I don't think it's realistic, all of us per meeting.
No, but I could go.
That's something I see the CC doing. I think for us it's more we have a meeting, some of us go present. This is where we meet. These are the topics we discuss. If you're looking to be a public member, this is how you get involved. This is where you get our information. And talking to him about potentially putting his parent coordinators in our listserv.
Right. I mean, I mentioned going to the school because I had done that way too many times, especially in 2018 when back then 45th decided to go against, all immigrant community and trying to protect and give Know Your Right workshop. I literally went from school to school for months delivering workshops. So. But we do whatever is more effective and efficient. But I do think it's important that they get to know us on their own terrain rather than us just asking them to come here.
Yeah.
Because it's a give and take.
Yeah, I think two things can be true at the same time, and that it needs to be both of those things. And I think even partnering more with the CEC, just to really, I feel like if parents understood what Foundation Aid formula was and how heavily it affects their children's education, they would show up for that. But because of all of the things, our parents don't have the information that they need. So, it's very important to us that, we try to get it to them as much as we can. Even in the churches, we have a lot of concerned parents in our churches, so we can make flyers and then, go to the churches and say, can we put this flyer here, to let everybody know that this meeting is happening, tell your parents, tell a parent, tell a friend, tell a friend.
So I just want to piggyback off of that, just because the CEC is having their elections this year. It's an election year, so that means that
You're running for president?
going to spread the news.
The CT is having their election this year, so
What-
she's spreading the news.
Spreading the news.
She's not running for president?
That's what I'm like, damn
Ah.
shame.
I was trying to get confirmation on that.
Amen to the running candidates. So yeah, so whether it's a parent coordinators or any administrator in the school,
Ojalá.
every PA and PTA should be getting a hold of what the CEC does, their mission, their vision, and that should also offset that wave of parents coming, whether it's into, you know, the youth and education and tapping into that, because we do have the CB12 link
Yeah.
on the page. So
Because I get so frustrated. Every year we go to the legislative breakfast and we hear so much from parents, but you know, during the year when we're having these meetings and stuff, you know, the same way, I don't know. Maybe we need to start feeding people. That's always a good incentive. People like to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
But we have to, you know, make a concerted effort to do better. And we have a hand in the audience.
Belkis?
Yes. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Okay, my name is Belkis Poch, and I community outreach for the Office of Engagement in Cancer Center, Columbia University. But we're talking about the parental involvement, the parent coordinator involvement in the education committee. That is a good idea, but I want to let you know that I try to come into the meeting too, because you're working with the school, with the parent associations and every group in the school. And now, especially you're working with the students in the higher school, because you're doing the workshop to prevent the cancer and health workshop for the students and the parents and the community. And that's how we are interested in continue working together with you in any position that you permit you us continue working favor for the community.
Gracias, Belkis.
Thank you. And hopefully we'll continue to work with us to make sure that the information is getting out to the parents. We appreciate you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Anything else on old business? Do we have any new business?
I want to use my announcement. Sorry, I just learned about this. I work with with labor in New York City. So one of the big unions, 1199, is putting out a new program, and I have a flyer here, which I don't know why I'm is here. But it's to the goal is to train people in our community to have access to education in healthcare. And it's not just being home attendants or anything like that, it's way beyond that. So some of the target occupations are certified medical assistant, certified pharmacy tech, community health worker, credential alcoholism and substance abuse counselor, mental health counselor, licensed practical nurse, master in social work, nurse practitioner, patient care coordinator, so many others. And it's completely free for anyone who qualifies. And the requirement pretty much go from simply having a high school diploma or equivalent all the way to having some college credit. The catch, if there is any, is that once the participant, the individual graduate, they have to commit to work for 3 years in the field with the employer that 1199 is going to be helping to place them. So just keep in mind that that employer will be a unionized employer with, you know, good wages and benefits and all that. So they're having orientations and info sessions open up. That information is not necessarily on the flyer, but there is a QR code that people can look up, or just go onto 1199 website and look for the program. The expected graduating time is for 2028. So anyone who was registering any kind of program or college on the fall of 2024 will definitely meet the criteria to, if they go to a 4-year college degree, they will be able to graduate in 2028. And those credits, everything is paid for. There is nothing to pay back. So they are looking
Pretty
for.
cool.
Yes, so that's
So, like,
why.
They only push for home attendance over here.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you
No,
want
but that's what I brought it up, because
Yeah.
it's in fact, home attendant is not even mentioned.
Yeah.
Amen.
Amen.
And they are just starting, so they need to graduate. I think it's 4,000 individuals.
4,000.
4,000. Oh, it's probably more, because my colleague, he was actually sweating and he was saying the numbers and we were all laughing, because it seems pretty impossible to do. But the more the merrier. Sure. I will have it electronic at some point so I can pass it along.
Oh, okay.
So thank you for welcoming that. And what is this? This is for union members.
Is there 2 brief announcements?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so Al Curlin here, and I'm making announcements for 2 organizations. The first one is something called the Uptown Youth Collective, which has been organized in Inwood and Washington Heights, and is comprised of DYCD funded organizations, but also smaller organizations that don't get a type of funding. And the goal is for the organization to share resources. One organization may have something like counseling, but they don't have recreation, and vice versa, so they could share resources. But we are also going to be launching a teen advisory board to the collective. Because we feel either the collective cannot be representative of young people unless young people have an equal representation in the organization. So the goal of the youth collective will be to train young people. We have about 15 high school students that have signed up on how to be a youth council member, choose one issue for a short-term project to promote, do education on, and do a presentation. Looks like the presentation will be at ACDP in the month of May. So after we have the meeting with the new recruits, they will develop flyers and outreach information, which I will share with you all at the next meeting in announcement form. And part of the agenda also for the youth council would be to do things that would enhance their ability to make decisions. But I said at the very least, what they should be doing is sending representatives to youth committee meetings. We are already working on their issues, and we have a brain trust here that they're not even aware of. And they also have information that we as adults may not be sensitive to. So for instance, the most popular issue that came up as a possible thing to attack is mental health issues. But there was one young woman said that the issue is not being addressed adequately enough is the issue of harassment of women and young women in public spaces. She said she was on a subway platform. She was being followed and harassed by an older guy that had no respect, for her private space. And there are actually 2 police officers 20 feet away, just continue to go in their cell phones and not even respond to the situation. Because young people are not taken seriously, for their concerns, especially young women. So that's the Uptown Youth Collective. In a similar fashion, I'm also coordinator with something called Vote 16, New York City, New York State. And we have organized to support legislation in Albany to lower the voting age just for city and state elections.
To
So-
16, I'm guessing.
Hmm?
To lower it to 16.
To 16 years of age. So this has been done in now 7 cities in the United States for over a decade.
Which
And-
cities?
the 6 in Maryland, like Tacoma Park and Highland Park, and 1 in Vermont. Brattleboro, Vermont, just lowered it a little while ago. And then other cities are taking a different approach. So Newark had an initiative where they went to the city council to lower the age of to be able to vote for school board members from 18 to 16.
That is.
And the council passed that measure. And the governor of New Jersey was so happy that Newark did that, he wants to introduce it to cities all over New Jersey. So that's another type of approach, because lowering the voting age in general is it's a long process. It's at least a 3-year process. You have to get the state legislature to vote yes. Then it has to be put out as a referendum on the ballot. And then it has to come back to the state legislature, who has to vote yes a second time.
Right.
So all good things take time. Even cities that succeeded in lowering the voting age, in some cases, it took them 7 years, to get that done. So it's the long distance runner, but we have to start somewhere. And again, for those of you that don't know, Community Board 12 in Manhattan took the lead on the issue. We went to them in May of 2023, and this board issued a resolution of support. The vote was like 33-5, which even as a passionate supporter, that shocked me like the margin. And that's been duplicated. We've submitted to 14 boards around the city, Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens. And we have 10 boards that have come on board out of the 14. So this progress, we have the entire elected delegation in Uptown Manhattan supports the resolution. They actually signed on as co-sponsors to both city and state legislation. And we have Borough President Mark Levine and Borough President Donovan Richards.
The way things are going,
so they're starting to move.
16-year-olds voting doesn't sound like a bad idea. Not like the 50, what is it, like people older voting.
Right.
Maybe the youth will vote better.
Right. I mean, one of the benefits is what they found in cities that have done this for 10 years.
Yeah.
Is that when a young person registers at 16 or 17, and they compare their turnout rates to those that register at 18, 19, or 20, in the initial year that they get the right to vote, they come out at 4 times the rate. And I think being in school and relatively stable, because I think back when I was 18, I wasn't thinking about anything except where am I going to college? I'm not going to get a job. Voting kind of got pushed down. But if you establish a habit of a voting heart when they're still in school and give them support with good civics programs, our state senator has legislation in Albany that would mandate civics education for every student beginning in the 5th grade, all the way through 12th grade. And it mandates it has to be action civics.
That we got to look at, make sure that we don't get a BOE commissioner or president like the one we got now. You saw that article? I was like, whoa, extra.
So those are the 2 initiatives. I have more details. The Vote 16 people are actually meeting tomorrow. So, next meeting, I'll be able to give you more concrete detail.
Cool.
Because one of the things we want to do is, it can't be Grandpa Al running around the city advocating for this thing. I'm 75 years old.
Okay.
So I made the adolescent hard.
Yeah, that's it, right? Looking good.
Yeah, without offending anybody.
So we want to form like a youth advisory council to Vote 16, just like we're doing with the Uptown Youth Coalition.
Well,
And
I'll tell
I'll
you the
report
hub.
back to you.
I had a good conversation with the leadership of the hub, because I feel like that the hub is something that New York Presbyterian does that I feel like has so much potential. And they have so much resources there, specifically with like dealing with mental health and overcoming those hurdles. Well, let's see how it goes. Because I feel like this shouldn't be a program that's kept inside the first floor, close to the hospital. It should be in schools, because schools are drowning, right? Particularly with like mental health and lack of mental health.
Right.
Got good, competent staff. Gotta put them out there.
Mhm.
But T, anything else? You said roles. So what? Like,
Yeah, I guess just the roles of whatever we took on. We said that we was gonna take the lead
Yeah.
on last month to just remember that and keep that in mind. So
You
we
want me
can
to
set
fill
up
out?
meetings.
You wanted me to read out what's happening for the following months?
Go ahead, Noemi.
Okay, so then, I think that we said that February is Hector.
yeah,
With addressing federal and state funding with input from the comptroller. March is gonna be focused
that
on youth and workforce development led by Darren.
I thought it was June. Okay.
no, yeah, we changed it because SYP starts in June.
Yes.
Well, in July.
Oh, good to know. Thank for really.
No, we changed it. You said yes. It's
Really?
okay, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
You can go back to the YouTube and check it out.
April presentation on potential losses from federal budget cuts.
Mhm.
We didn't assign a person for that.
Okay.
So something to look at. April, it doesn't have a designated person. May was mental health resource fair at George Washington High School.
That's something we gotta, yeah.
That we have to follow up, incorporating the forum format. And that was something that we were gonna work together.
Yeah, we're working. together.
And then in June, we have the youth open forum led by me. Okay, I kind of forgot about that.
You have plenty of time to remember.
I could connect you with a nutritionist.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So that's all. Folks.
So we just did that, okay.
Which one was the one that was on the side?
April.
It was April.
Now remember, April is the month that the budget is going to be decided. It probably will not be decided April 1st because it's always late. But let's keep in mind that that is the month that the state budget is decided.
So it was a potential losses from the federal budget cut.
Yep.
Federal budget cut.
Mm-hmm.
But by then we will know.
So like,
Yeah.
for instance, we should reach out to the congressman. Is there somebody reaching out to the congressman to provide us and hopefully see somebody from that office? To get some updates besides flyers.
Absolutely, Chair.
So I
Okay,
would-
well,
I could reach out and see if we can get somebody.
yeah, I know Shauna in his Harlem office.
We reach out to everybody.
Absolutely. So I think that I think that's it. Do we have is it a motion for adjournment? Like,
I motion to adjourn.
is there a second?
Unanimous. Everybody.
Meeting adjourned. Yeah.
I appreciate everybody. So next month we got Hector. So Hector will be presenting. I already see emails with the comptroller from the city responding. So I know for sure the education policy person for the city would there's a high probability that they'll be here next week.
Yes.
Right.
And yeah, let's make sure that we reach out to all our elected officials too and
I
encourage them to
haven't,
come.
I'm not gonna lie to you, I haven't done my due diligence. I felt like we had to get our stuff together better at the committee level.
We now need the second.
And I feel like we're in a very good
Thursday.
place now
Oh, okay.
from where we were at in the past. So I feel like we could.
I appreciate y'all.
All right, great job, Tanisha.
Good night.
Bye, thank you.
Oh, and did everybody here congratulate our second vice chair, Tanisha? She already officially started her tenure this month.
Yes. I'll be up
So,
in everybody business too.
congratulations.
Thank you.
We are privileged to have you, Madam Second Vice Chair.
Thank you so much. Privileged to be here with y'all.
All
All
right,
right,
Mom.
y'all. See y'all later.